PerfectFit Pointe Shoe Inserts are designed to be easily molded by the dancer herself, using only her foot in the shoe. This short video will walk you through the process so that you can mold them yourself at home. The whole process should take about 20 minutes, about 10 minutes per foot, and you'll only have to do it once. At the end, you'll have a completely customized pair of inserts to fit your foot and your shoe precisely, which will offer unparalleled comfort and support. Before we get started, here's what you'll need. Several paper towels to wipe off your hands and feet and to keep your work area clean. Your pair of pointe shoes, preferably with ribbons and elastic sewn on if they are new, so that you can roll on and off point while the inserts mold. Your regular toe pads, a set of gel big toe spacers if you wear them. Either of these styles is fine. Scissors for trimming your molded inserts, and finally a timer or stopwatch if you like. Okay, let's get started. Open your kit. This is what you should have. 2 lavender wick-away fabric covers. Tucked inside these fabric covers, 2 purple stretch spacer sleeves. 2 sets of jars of moldable impression material. 2 plastic bag covers, and a handy white mesh bag to store your inserts in. Before beginning, we recommend that you warm up your feet a little bit with a few releves, pliés, and stretching. Choose the foot that you want to mold first and put on your other shoe, doing your normal padding routine. We will only mold 1 insert at a time since it's easier to manage. Make sure to remove any padding from inside your shoes, like a wad of lamb's wool or a foam wedge that you keep down in the platform, before molding the inserts. We don't want anything else in your shoe during the molding process. We need to adapt your gel spacers slightly so that the moldable impression material can grab onto and anchor it in the insert, forming one integrated piece. We do this by putting a little stretch fabric sleeve around it. The same sleeve can be used to adapt 2 common styles of gel spacers. Put the sleeve on such that the seam is oriented outwards, on the edge of the spacer not touching your skin. Note that we will only adapt big toe spacers. If you also wear smaller spacers in between your little toes, you should just wear them as normal and they will come out when you take the insert off. Remember that you should only integrate spacers if your shoe has already been fitted while wearing them. Otherwise, your shoe probably will not afford the extra volume. If you think you need spacers based on the natural space between your toes, you should consider getting refitted for a new pair of shoes first. Open 1 set of jars of the moldable impression material, 1 jar of turquoise and 1 jar of white. Scoop out all of one color first, then scoop out the other color and combine both. Knead the turquoise and white putty together until the colors blend pretty uniformly. This shouldn't take longer than about 30 seconds. Try to mix the putty more with your fingertips than in the palm of your hands, as the heat from your hands will warm the material and accelerate the curing process. You will also notice that the material leaves a bit of a sheen on your hands. This is because there is a small amount of mineral oil blended in the putty to ensure that it doesn't stick to your skin during the molding process and easily slides off your foot after it is finished curing. That's why it's useful to have a few paper towels handy. Once the colors are mixed, the chemical reaction begins, so don't mix longer than you need to. The colors don't need to be perfectly blended, and you shouldn't have to mix longer than 30 seconds. The material starts to slowly thicken as it cures, which will limit its moldability, so it's important that it's as fluid as possible when you first apply it to your foot. The total cure time will be around 7 to 9 minutes, so you don't have to rush to apply it to your foot, but don't dally either. Put a little pinch of the moldable material in the crook of your toes first, and then insert the spacer, making sure the seam is oriented away from the crook of your toes. This will ensure that the moldable material contacts the fabric sleeve. Next, apply the material generally all over the tips and tops of the toes, being sure to cover any known pressure areas. Remember, the material will flow away from these spots, but will fill the space around them and thus reduce pressure. You don't have to worry about being too specific about the placement of the material, as it will naturally flow to where it needs to go. Remember that the material will flow out towards the throat of the shoe, so if you put material on the tips of your toes, it will naturally flow upwards and cover the tops of your toes. You don't need to add any material underneath your foot, as it will naturally flow through your toes, unless you are wearing a spacer. In this case, add a bit of material on the underside of the spacer, since the material may have a hard time flowing to this area with the spacer in place. Now put the fabric cover over the top. Next, put the plastic bag loosely over your foot and insert it into the shoe. The material will start squeezing out the throat of the shoe, which is what we want. It will self-adjust in terms of volume to fill only the voids in your shoe. It may feel slightly tight at first, but the pressure will decrease as the material flows to the voids in the shoe and escapes near the drawstring. You can also start your timer or stopwatch if you'd like to keep track of time. Now alternate between standing flat, rolling through demi-pointe, standing on point, and walking around for approximately 7 to 9 minutes until the material finishes curing. The moldable material will flow to the voids in the box of the shoe and mold very precisely to the shape of the toes, continuing to self-adjust and equalize pressure until the material cures. Rolling through demi-pointe on the way to full point and walking around on flat will ensure that the resulting impression does not simply feel like a static cast of the toes in a single position, but rather a comfortable blend of positions that is unnoticeable whether on point, on flat, or rolling through demi-pointe. If you do not yet have your ribbons and elastics sewn on, you can articulate through demi-pointe while holding the heel of your shoe on with your hand. During this step, it's important to think both about lengthening through your toes as well as correct ankle alignment, with your weight centered over your first 2 toes, so that the molded insert will encourage and remind you to use proper technique. Occasionally check the escaped material with a quick squeeze or poke. It should start to firm up, and once it's done curing, it should feel like a rubber ball. If you are watching the clock, it should take about 7 to 9 minutes. It may still feel slightly fluid inside the shoe, but that sensation comes from the oil that's blended in with the moldable material. After the material seems firm, repeat steps 1 through 9 for the other foot, leaving the insert you just molded on your foot. The right and left finished inserts will naturally look a little different from each other. Remember that no one's right and left feet are exactly the same, so your inserts should mirror that. If your right foot is bigger, for example, you might find that more material squeezes out. At the same time, you want a more or less balanced feel between the 2 inserts, with the general distribution of the material to be similar. Try and apply the moldable material in a similar manner, same distribution and placement, as with your first foot. After the second insert seems firm, remove both shoes and slide the inserts off your feet. You might have to wiggle them off your foot a bit since they have such a glove-like fit. You can wipe a bit of the excess oil off of your finished inserts with a paper towel and wipe off your feet as well. Next, simply cut off the excess material along the line of the edge of the fabric cover on the top and bottom of the insert using regular scissors. If you could see the lavender fabric cover poking out from the throat of the shoe when you had the shoe on, you will need to trim that as well. That's why the fabric edge is unfinished, to allow for trimming. In this case, it might be helpful to use the impression lines from the shoe's drawstring casing as a guide, if you can see them, and cut right below them. Try your shoe on again with the inserts inside to make sure that they are not at all visible, and make any further trimming as necessary. You now have a completely customized pair of inserts for your pointe shoes. If you examine the inserts, you should find that they are thinnest at your usual pressure points, including under your longest toe or toes. This might seem counterintuitive at first, but it's actually a far more effective strategy for reducing pressure points in your shoe. Remember that this is unlike a traditional toe pad because the goal is actually to improve the fit of the shoe. Instead of taking a reactive approach by adding more padding, like with wads of lamb's wool or gel cushioning products, which by adding thickness can actually increase pressure, the inserts take a more proactive approach by filling the space around the pressure points, which helps to offload pressure and distribute your weight more evenly.